Hello guys, thanks for joining this session. In this session we are going to learn about arrays in PowerShell. So let's look into the topics which we are going to discuss in this session. So in this session we are going to learn about what is arrays. Once we understand that, then we will look into array list, how to create array in PowerShell. We will also discuss about array index. And once we are comfortable with these things, then we will look into multidimensional arrays, where we will look into how to create a multi-dimensional array within PowerShell. Once we are comfortable with these topics, then we will perform some exercises where we can check that how to create an array variable and then how we can sort it. We can also look into how to add an element to an array. We will also check that how to find array length in PowerShell. Then we will look into how to remove an item from array. Then we will also look into how to check a value exists within an array or not. And in exercise 6 we will also look into how to clear an array. And at last but the not least, we will also look into how to print array. So let's start our discussion with a diagram. Whenever we are creating an array within any of the languages, an array can be represented something like this into the memory, where array indices represents the position of the elements and array values can be represented with the number within the boxes. Now coming to the PowerShell, when we are creating an array, if you pass the value as comma separated value, then PowerShell treat it as an array. So let's jump into the PowerShell script editor and where we will see all this thing in action. So we are into PowerShell script editor. So suppose that if you want to create an array, so what you need to do, you need to use something like this 1 2 3. Then if we will run it, here we will get the type of the variable. Now if we will select this and run it, then you will come to know the type of this variable. So let's run it. So here it has represented that object array. So this symbol is represented as a array. If we don't want to print the name, so what we will do, we can again use something like array.getType and we will run it. We will select this one and run. So it has represented that system.array and the name of this is object array. So this is what I discussing about. Whenever if we are passing the values with the comma separated, then PowerShell treat this as a array. Now we will use the same variable and we will pass a single value, and once you select this one and once you run it, we will also print the get type. We will select this one and run it. Then here it is a type of int32. So this is the way by which you can create the loosely typed array variable in PowerShell. So remove this one. Now we will look into how do we can create a strongly typed array variable, even though if you're passing a single value, that is being treated as a array. So let's look into this example. To create an strongly typed array variable, what you need to do, you need to mark it as object with this bracket and the variable which you want to create, for example array1. And even though if you're passing a single value without a comma separated value, you will see the type is become a array. So here we need to get the type, and once you will run it, then you will find that it is a type array. See here, it is type array even though we are passing a single value. So this way we can ensure that the variable which we are creating, that is an array variable. Okay, now moving further. So here you will find that we are assigning a value over here, but I want to create an empty array variable in PowerShell, and later point of time I will use that empty array variable. We will do this as well. So let's look into that, how we will create an empty array variable in PowerShell. So to create an empty PowerShell variable, what you need to do, put an array, and here you need to use at the rate of symbol and with the parent. Now if we will run this, and here we will print the type as well. We'll print it as well. Now select this one and run as selection. So here you will find the type is system.array. So this is the way by which you can create empty array within PowerShell. Now moving further, one thing you notice that whenever we are creating an array, then it is being created with like an object. But I want to create an integer array within PowerShell. So how do I can do that? So this is also very straightforward. Let's look into that. This example is not specific for integer. You can create it for any data type, but I'm taking here as a integer type. So suppose that if I want to create an integer array, so what we need to do, we need to start this bracket, and within that we can mention int32 or int as well, and here the array symbol, and we can specify the variable name like array3 and whichever the value which we want to assign over here. So we can pass it like this, and we can check the type of this variable. So array3 dot get type. Now select this one and run as selection. So now here you will find that the type is int32. If we will not specify, then what will happen? By default it will create an integer type, and if you provide a comma separated over here, which I have already demonstrated that, and if I will remove this one, so default it will create an object array. Run it, then you will find that it is showing me int32. That is wrong. I will prove this point because I have already initialized this variable and it is into the memory, so it is not creating it. So to prove my point, what I will do, I can create another variable which is not being created earlier, and here I will assign 1, 2, and again we need to specify the get type, and now we will select this one. This will create as object array, not the int32. So let's run it. See here, it has created object array, and that is of system array type. So this is what I wanted to tell you. If you want to create an integer or any data type of array, what you need to do, you need to specify it in front of that and specify int32 or whichever data type you want to create as an array, and you should run it. I can run it again with this. I will put over here and pass a single value. This time I will pass 2 and run it. See here, it has created a int32 array. So this is what I wanted to show you over here. Now moving further, let's discuss about array list. Array list is another way by which you can create an array within PowerShell. It is really very useful whenever we have a requirement where we are frequently modifying or searching an array, along with adding and removing of an item within an array frequently. So in that scenario, it is really recommended to use array list. So now the question over here is how we can create an array list variable within PowerShell. So let's look into that, how we will create an array list. It is also very straightforward. Just define a variable over here, array6, and we need to use new object commandlet object, and which is of type system dot collections dot array list. So this is the way we can create an array list. So run this. So here you can select this one and run it. So this variable has been created now. Now let's check the type of this variable. So to do that, you already know that array6, the variable name, and the get type. Now we will select this one and run as selection. This button we will click. See here, it has created array list, and which is of system.object type. So now moving further, let's discuss about array index. To discuss about array index, I wanted to go to the same diagram which I have showed you at the start of this session. So this is the diagram which I have showed you in the early of the session, where I already mentioned that array index is represented with the sequential value, which is of 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. In PowerShell it is a start with 0, but in some of the programming language it will start with 1. So basically it is a representation of the element position within the memory. So if you want to access the individual element of an array, for example, you want to access the value 30, then you should have to access it via array indices. So let's look into this example. So suppose if we have an array, that is array 7, and we have the element 10, 20, 30, 5, 8, and I want to access the value 30. So how do I can access it? so we can access it with their indices. So I need to provide the name of the variable, and then I need to specify 0 1 2. So the position of the 30 value is 3, so we need to specify 2. Why? Because it is starting with 0. Now we can run this and see the output. Sorry, I haven't initialized it, so let's run it together. So see here, we have accessed 30. So this is the way by which you can access the individual element of an array with the help of index. Let's move further. Now let's discuss about multidimensional array. You can imagine a multidimensional array as a table with columns and rows where each cell has its own index inside a PowerShell environment. So let's do an example so that you can better understand it. So in this example, we are going to perform these three tasks. We will create a multidimensional array in PowerShell, and then we will add the values within that multidimensional array, and we will print those values. So how to do that? So to create the multidimensional array, what you need to do, you can start with the variable name multidimensional array variable, and I have already mentioned that to create an empty array you can start with @sign, and then now what we will do, we can run this. So this will create an empty array. Run it. Now what we will do, we will add the values to this multidimensional array. So to do that, again write empty array, and here I am going to create the element like subjects. So here we need to specify and we can tell that here we can specify subject 1, and the name of the subject is maths, and then we can specify the value marks for that. Tell that 9. Now same we will repeat for other subjects, so we will copy paste it. Here we can specify subject 2. Now we can change it. Here we can specify subject, and here you can also change the value or keep the same value. Okay, so now what we need to do, we have to print the values. So how we can do that? So to do that, I'm going to use a loops I haven't discussed yet. I will discuss in the further section, but I will use it here to print the values. So let's do it. Now we will write like for each, this is the loop, and we will print it the value. So how we can do that? We need to iterate these. So how do we can do that? We need to write empty array. This is the array, and I want the individual items from this variable. I want to iterate one by one, so I can assign it in one of the values. So here I can specify it like this. So what I'm telling over here is that get the element one by one into this variable and then print it. Now I'm telling that print it. So here, so if you look into this example, first we have initialized it, and then we have added the values to this array, and now we are printing it. So select it and now run it. Then you will find that it has printed something like this. So basically it is a tabular representation within the memory, but when we are using write output, so it is printing like this. But instead of that, if we will put write host, then if you will run it, then you will see that it is a actual tabular representation. See here, so this is the subject one. So see here we have the rows and the columns. So here we have created the multidimensional array where we have added values as an array. So if you closely look into this, then you will find that first we have created an array, and within that again we are creating an array which has these number of elements, and we are appending to this array. Then afterwards what we are doing, we are printing it. So this is the way you can create multidimensional array within PowerShell. Now let's move further and let's look into the topic. What are the topic remaining now? So far we have already seen all these things. So till now we have completed multidimensional. Now we will perform all these exercises. So let's jump into the PowerShell editor and where we can perform all these exercises. So let's do the exercise 1. First what we will do, we will create a variable, and here exercise 1, and we will assign some random variable over here like 23, 11, 44, 5, 78. So I will create a variable. Now I will sort it. So to do that, what you need to do, you can use the pipe, and here we can specify short. So select it, and we can also assign it into a variable called sorted, so that we can print this as well, sorted. So now select this one and run it. So here it has sorted. Now I wanted to sort it in a descending. How do I can do that? So it is also straightforward. What you need to do, you need to specify over here descending. Now execute it again, then it has sorted in descending order. So this is the way by which you can sort an array. Now moving to the another exercise, that is add value to an array. So let's create an array first. So this time I am taking an example of fruit array. So here first what we will need to do, we need to initialize this array with some fruits, apple, and then we have to put orange. So I have initialized this array. Now to add the values within this array, we first need to make it as an array list, which I have already mentioned in this session earlier. So right now if you will run this, then you will find that it is created as an object. So print the type. Now run it. We will run, select this one and run. It is an object, but to modify this array we need to convert it into a list. So how do we can do that? So to do that, what we need to do, we need to create an array list, another array like this, fruit array list, and this time we will tell that we want to use it like array list collections, array list, and this time I will assign this fruit array over here, fruit array. So now this fruit list is become array list. So run it. We can also print the type fruit array list, run it. Sorry, to get the type I want to check the type of this. So run it again. So it is of type array list. Now I want to add it. So it is pretty much straightforward now. So to add value within this list, so what you need to do, you can use fruit list and then use add method, and here we can pass another fruit name that is called peach, and again we can print it. Now select this one and see what it is showing. So it has added. Now moving further, I want to remove a value within this array list. So how I can do that? So it is also straightforward. So you can write the name of the array and use remove method. And what value I want to remove? I want to remove apple. I hate apple. So here you can run it again. So run it. So apple gone. So this is the way by which you can add an item and remove an item from an array list. Now moving further, the next exercise is check the length of an array. So we can check the length of this array again. So how we can do that? So it is pretty much straightforward. You can use the name of this array and the length, and here for array list we use count method. So we can use count properties, it is not method, count. Now you will select this one and run it. It is giving us this value 3. Why? Because we have 3 elements inside. Now moving further, so this is, we have identified the length of array list, but I want the length of array. So let's go into further example. So we will use the exercise 1 array and check the length of this array. So how we can do that? We can use size 1 and we can use length method, length property, sorry. So now we will select this one and run it. So it is showing me it has 5 value. The length of the array is 5. So this is the way by which you can check the length. So now moving further, what is the next exercise? So we have remove item from an array list, which we have already seen. Now moving further, we have check value exist in array. So let's do this exercise. So in this exercise also I will use exercise 1 example, where we have created a variable exercise 1. Now we will use a method called contains. So I will check that whether value 11 is exist or not within this, and it will returns the true and false value. So let's select this one and execute it. So we do have value 11 within this array. See here, and suppose that if we are checking the value which is not existing, so it will return false. For example 12. Now again execute it, so it will return false. Earlier it has returned true. Now let's run it, so it is returning false. So this is the way you can check that value exists within array or not in PowerShell. Now moving further, what is the next exercise? So clear array. So suppose that I have this array and I want to clear it. So how we can do that? So let's do it now. So to clear an array, it is pretty much straightforward as well. We will again use the example one, and I want to clear this array. So how I can do that? We can use PowerShell variable that is null and assign to this array and execute it. See here, it assigned the value. Now if you will run this, you will find that there is no value exist within this variable. So to confirm that, we can check it. So we can specify exercise 1 and we can use this operator, comparison operator, and we can check with null variable. See, it will return true. To run it, see here, it has returned true. So this is the way you can clear the array within PowerShell. Now let's move further. The last exercise, but not the least. Select this one. So for this exercise, I will take the fruit list example and I want to print it. To print, so what we need to do, we can specify over here and we can use write output and run it. So this is the way by which you can print the array variable. So we have used here pipe operator. I have already demonstrated this in earlier of this session where I have used for each loop. I will discuss in next session. So for a time being, just consider it as a loop is nothing but a way by which you can iterate the values within an array. So we will discuss about this. There are various loops available within PowerShell. So for a time being, just consider it as one of the mechanisms to iterate the array. So this is the way by which you can print the values of array within a screen. Same way, if you want to print the values into a file, how we can do that? So it is also straightforward. So I will copy this, and here we can use the pipe operator. This is an implicit loop within PowerShell. So now here we can specify that there is one commandlet called out file. We can use it and we can specify where we want to save this value. So we can grab this one and here we can tell that fruit.txt. Now if you will run it, make it fruits. If you will select this one and run it, so it has generated a fruits.txt. So let's look into that. So see here, it's a fruits.txt and it has given the output into a file that is orange banana peach. So this file with the name called fruits.txt. So this is the way you can print the values within a text file in PowerShell. Now moving further, so let's go to the topic and see what are the topics we have covered, and then we will wrap the session. So in this session we have seen that array, what is array, array list, array index, multi-dimensional arrays, and we have also performed all these exercises. Now I feel like you are more comfortable in arrays within PowerShell. So on this note, I'm wrapping up the session. See you in the next session. Till then, bye bye, take care.